Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. We're here today to talk about advanced SharePoint document management. I'm going to be walking you through some really cool examples and showing you how to do some great stuff in terms of manage those libraries in SharePoint. Before we get into that main presentation, I'm going to go ahead and walk through some information for you. We're just going to do some preliminary and then we'll get right to it. Give me 1 second. I'm just trying to get to my right screen. There we go. Sorry about that. I'm Will Cooper. I am a SharePoint solutions developer. I am involved in all kinds of things with Microsoft related technology. I run a SharePoint consulting business that is WWC Software Solutions, and I've been a private SharePoint consultant for more than 10 years. And additional to that, I run a YouTube channel. It's called SharePoint Smart. You can find that easily by just doing a quick search on YouTube. If you're not already a subscriber on that, I hope you'll check it out. There's more than 170 informational videos all related to SharePoint. And another thing that I spend a lot of my time with is a platform called SharePointDashboards.com. And that is a SharePoint tool to allow you to visualize data in SharePoint. We're going to talk more about that after the main presentation. So if you're able to stick around after our main presentation on advanced document management, I have some additional bonus content for you on that. Infowise is the company that offers the software which will be featured in our presentation, which is Ultimate Forms. And our philosophy is to keep it simple, and we want to make things easy, and we're all the time improving our tool set. I really love Ultimate Forms. I was a customer before I ever was working with the Infowise team, and it truly is awesome, and I love to work with this, and I love to share it with other people. So Ultimate Forms is a tool set that you can add to your SharePoint environment. It's a comprehensive tool set. It's completely inside your SharePoint interface, so you don't have to go into any external things like that. It deploys directly into SharePoint, and it allows you to build out all kinds of really awesome custom functionality and interface with no code. You do not have to do any programming or development. As I mentioned at the end, after our main presentation, I'm going to have some information about SharePoint dashboards if you have time and can stick around. I will be recording the session. It will be posted on YouTube later today. And we will be posting a template. Everything I demonstrate to you will be free to download as part of the trial with Ultimate Forms. So if you're curious about some of the things that I show on screen, you can actually download exactly what I'll show on my SharePoint site directly from the Infowise site. As far as any questions you might have, you can use the interface in Teams. This is our first time using Teams webinar. We're making a switch on that. We used to use GoToWebinar, so this is our first run on that. So hopefully there aren't any hiccups, but as I mentioned, we do want to hear from you. Just use the Q&A interface in Teams webinar. Okay, Ultimate Forms is available both for SharePoint Online and also for on-premise. So regardless of which SharePoint you happen to use, the concepts that I show in my presentation can be applied and are workable for your SharePoint environment. This is just a visual I like to throw up there. This is how I tend to think about out-of-the-box SharePoint. A lot of potential, but there are many things missing. And so when you are thinking about building a solution for your business, there's things that you're going to want to do, like automated email notifications, custom print templates, custom forms, and you just can't do any of that in out-of-the-box SharePoint. So that's what Ultimate Forms brings to the table. It's a Swiss Army knife, if you will. So let's get into the focus of our presentation, which is document management. So I talk to lots and lots of different kinds of businesses and organization, and the most fundamental aspect of using SharePoint is libraries. And for many businesses, they just tend to use the out-of-the-box functions. They don't make any adjustments or improvements to that, and therefore the functionality and user experience is lacking. So this is the all too familiar plain vanilla SharePoint library view, which we see very often. And inherently there's not anything especially wrong. It's simple, it's easy to understand. However, it doesn't provide a lot of the things that we're going to feature in the rest of the presentation. And everything tends to look the same. It's very plain to look at, and it's hard to differentiate between different files and libraries and things like that as you're trying to navigate around and find something. Okay, so default library use leads to bad user experience. So this is caused by some problems. There is not metadata with the files. And we need metadata to be able to do effective structured search and filtering in order to allow users to find documents easily. And so we really need that, and that's something that most businesses don't do in any capacity, and that leads to user frustration when it comes time to trying to find that file, amongst thousands. Search is unstructured, so SharePoint provides you, of course, a search box up above the library, and you can use that. It's generally useful, but it's unstructured, and it doesn't allow us to be very sophisticated or specific when we're going to look for something. So we type in a word and hopefully we see what we need, but we might see a whole lot of other things as well. Another problem is that it doesn't encourage interaction or collaboration between the users. So, it's just a place to store documents, but it's not facilitating any kind of communication. And we'll look at what I mean by that and how you can improve things by adding some of those capabilities. All right, so this is paramount. Clearly, anyone who's working with a large library wants to be able to find documents quickly. So whatever you're doing, you want to make sure that you have a strategy that allows that to happen really fast. So here are some features that I would argue need to be a part of your document management strategy to have a good user experience. These are goals. This is what you want in terms of being more sophisticated, more advanced with your document management. We want to allow it to be very intuitive for users to navigate through the environment themselves. So that's what the self-service is about. It needs to be streamlined, and we need a lot of visual information. As I mentioned in that previous screen, we don't get that really with the regular navigation of a document management library. Email notifications are important. So your out-of-the-box SharePoint doesn't do a whole lot in that regard. You can turn something on for yourself to just notify you when items in a library are updated, but there's no sophistication to that. Beyond that, you'd have to do some time-consuming workflow to try and do that up and have to do that repeatedly in multiple situations. We certainly want to be able to filter, sort, and search effectively, and as I mentioned, we want to have some structure to that. And then we need to do some tracking. So we need to be able to see, when things are updated and have, some progression in terms of how that works. Document tagging, this is a big one. I mentioned that in SharePoint, normally the way most businesses are using libraries, they're not adding any kind of metadata. There's no tagging of information in the documents, and that results in ineffective search, unstructured search. We want to be able to make email updates happen in a very simple manner for the user so they can opt in to get updates when particular documents get updated. And we also want to have the ability for people to interact with each other and ask questions about documents and collaborate with each other. And obviously we certainly want a good user interface all controlled and through a central dashboard. So those are goals. That's what we want to get. All right, let's jump in to SharePoint. So here I am in my SharePoint environment, and this site, as I mentioned, it's going to be available to you to download later today. So you can actually interact and try everything that I'm going to show you. So document libraries, are all over SharePoint. So what I showed to you, this is settings that are applied in a particular library, but you can reuse and reapply this template and use it across all your libraries that you want. So let's walk through some features. We're going to really look at things from a user perspective at first, and then I'm going to talk to you about how you can make updates to control the interface and adjust settings, turn on and off features as you like. Okay, so I am going to go to my first link here and go to my main document library. Right away you can see a vastly different experience than what you might see in out-of-the-box SharePoint. So let's talk about some of the columns that are here and what the purpose is. Then we'll dive into the form and talk about how these things are updated. So in all kinds of processes, we really need to do status tracking. So that's something I definitely recommend, and it's part of this template because we need to handle things like approvals, revisions. We sometimes have documents that need to get archived. We need to handle those situations. So it certainly is a valuable concept to have a status attached to it. Category is a part of the metadata. We want to be able to know what category documents are. It'll help us with the searching, which we'll come to in a second. So adding that metadata field is going to allow for better search results. You can let your users select that when they're uploading documents. Now in SharePoint, out of the box, obviously you've got the name of the person who loaded the document to SharePoint. That's the created field. And then we've got modified, whoever the last person is. Additional to that, it could be valuable for us to go ahead and identify and require that an owner is attached to the document. That's going to help us keep things more organized. Somebody has some accountability for it, and that'll help you know when things need to be removed or updated, or if there's questions or things like that. Additional to that, we've got a star column. Any of you guys who've ever used Gmail will immediately be familiar with this concept. And this is just an additional way to flag certain documents in the interface. This is an optional feature. You don't necessarily have to use this in there, but I think you might find it useful. And so if I click in there, I could flag documents. It's just a way to put a bookmark, if you will. It's another way to tag it to help it stand out and differentiate between different documents. Now this has a form attached to it, so that's missing normally with libraries. Now SharePoint has a side panel form that can open up, but you can't customize that in any way. In this case, we have a custom form set up that's going to allow us to make updates. Okay, so this is some of the metadata that we want to collect from users. So when we load documents, we want to, as I say, have the owner. Now, what's simple is this is set up to auto-populate the owner to the person who created the document, but you have the ability to change that and override that. Then here we have some statuses. You can set whatever statuses you want, but now I can have some color coding in the interface just to make things stand out. And then we have categories. We can think about what is this purpose of this document most closely related to. So we're going to have some validation here and make sure we collect this information consistently. And that's going to reward us by allowing those users to get what we really want, which is really good structured search results as you accumulate more and more documents over time. And then here's the star column. Normally you'd set that from the user interface, but that's where the fields are. And then more metadata. So document tagging. So that's not something that people are typically doing, but by adding this field for tag words, it ensures that we have something to search on from a text standpoint. Now notice when I don't have anything in there, it's going to bark at me, so to speak. It'll be pink, and so that tells the user the very first time they open the form, they need to fill something in, and then the pink background goes away. So that's just a way to make things stand out. Now also in that interface, we have some other features. So there you see it's archived, so it's gray, and obviously I can do filters. I think many of you are already familiar with filtering on that. So I'm going to go to update, and maybe I got a question about that document. So we want to facilitate collaboration, interaction with the user. So if I put a question here, user can go in here and say, When are we getting the next updated sales information? Really simple, right? I don't need to go to my email and find this person or anything like that. I can just type in a question. Notice this button immediately popped into view, and that's going to auto trigger an email for me. Another part of this is the ability to add my name. Maybe this document is really important to me in particular, and I need to know when it gets updated. So what we can do is allow users to add themselves to a list, send update notifications to, and so they're automatically going to be getting emails anytime this is updated. And this can just be multiple people, so that's going to be an important concept. So these email notifications are going to go out automatically, and I'll show you what that looks like. In fact, I just got one. So there's my sales report is updated, it tells who made the update, and it says the current status. And then if I click on that, that'll take me directly to the form that I was just in. So that information is going to be really handy. And then, like I say, we want to allow for questions to appear. So we've got one of those as well. I'll show you that email. Question: when are we getting the next updated sales information? It's asked by Will Cooper. So we're being friendly and allowing people to collaborate, just based on questions they have, because we're updating and sharing information all the time in SharePoint. So we want to have an interface that makes that really easy for people to work with. So all of that sets up improved functionality when it comes to search, which I think we can all agree is a really critical function in SharePoint. Because search this library is great. I would never suggest to you to not use it, but once you start getting into thousands of documents, we don't want that unstructured search where I type a word and it brings me back a list of 60 documents. You're making it unnecessarily hard for users to find information. So in our tool set, we're going to look at two different types of search functionality. So I started with a page called Document Search, and this uses a special search web part provided by Infowise. So what's nice about this is you can consolidate. So notice in my drop-down, I can pick from any libraries in this list, and so I can always come to the search screen. So this is just your plain vanilla simple search. It's going to immediately pull me back results. However, what I'm also able to do is toggle into an advanced mode. And I can be very structured and specific about what I'm searching for. So I could, for example, say, I know this is archived, and I could search that, but I can do a compound search. So I can do a plus, and I could say, and category equals other. That one is below, but it's just to demonstrate this concept. I can search. So this is giving me some more structured, sophisticated tools than that, generic search that's at the top of the site. So now we've got an advanced structured search that allows our users to be very smart and very specific to target exactly what they're looking for, instead of kind of digging through the pile, so to speak. Another really nice alternative approach is to do what I would describe as a filter search. So I can do a compound search using these drop-downs. So when I come to the screen, I can see all these different items, and I can say, this is, you might call it a drill down as well. So I could say, well, I know this, I want the ones in draft. So now I just have the draft results, and then I can get even more specific. I can say, where the category, equals, IT or whatever, I can go ahead and do a compound search and do those compound conditions together. And I can even do things like keywords. So those tag words I mentioned earlier, that's where this comes into play. So we have a special field for that, and I can do something like, say, I'm looking for ones that were tagged with the word technology. And all of these documents specifically in that word had that tag with technology. So having all of that additional metadata is benefiting us tremendously in our interface. Another cool thing we can do is we can show preview tiles. We have an alternative view for that. So this actually shows you a preview of the page, so I can actually get a visual before I even open it. It's just an additional alternative view. Now what you're able to do is control these different features and functions from our interface. So in Ultimate Forms, you have this main settings page that you can open up, and that form is controlled through our Form Designer tool. This is very easy to work with. As I mentioned, there is no code at all, which is really important. In old school days, you'd have to do HTML and CSS and JavaScript, and you need your SharePoint developer, if you even have one, to do all those things for you. You don't need a technical person to do this. You can do it yourself. You can go into these configuration menus and you can do things like set the colors to whatever you like, and what you see is what you get. So if I want to make that green, I just hit OK and save, and then immediately everything's green. So you can just make those adjustments, and then I can also set rules. If you'll remember, for example, on the tag words, I set a rule. I said I want that to be pink until that field has a value. So I said if tag words is blank, make that pink. And as you might recall, that immediately turned off the second I filled in a value. So that was super handy. So it's extremely easy to work with this. You can drag sections around. I just reordered it. And then you can also do multi-column layout. So I've got 4 columns there, but you can see I just move a slider. So I'm not sitting there thinking about precise pixel adjustments and things like that. Not at all. I just can make containers. I can even copy containers, which is really cool. So I can just hit this copy button, and that'll have the exact same setup as the one above it. So putting together forms is really streamlined. So I love the form building tool. The email notifications are configured through the alerts section. Quite easy to set up, and this is going to be very useful to you because, like I say, in SharePoint normally you can't configure this specifically. You'd have to do something like use Power Automate, which is more of a developer-oriented activity. So in this case, I could just control who it goes to, and then I just said anytime this is update and question has a value in it, then go ahead and send me this email. And then I can go into this visual editor tool, and I can just reference the fields. So you can see all those fields referenced square brackets. So that's how I laid out my email content and controlled my role. So here's my role to make sure questions go out. And then we had that other one about when documents get updated, we want to notify all the people in that field. So the field I named notify, they're all going to get those notifications, and it just gives them some general information. This document was updated by so-and-so at this time, and so on. So those are quite easy to set up and work with. So some really cool, awesome functionality. Now after the presentation, later today, you'll be able to download this template. You'll do that by going to the screen after you have your Infowise trial installed. You go to the solution catalog, click on webinars. You'll see the one from last month at the moment, but later today you're going to see the one that says Advanced Document Management. It'll appear right where I'm hovering. You can download exactly what I demonstrated and try it for yourself. So how do you get the Ultimate Forms tool? So this is in the InfowiseSolutions.com site. All that you need to do is go in here and click Try Now for free, and then you can do the installation to your tenant by just do Install Now, and then pick which version of SharePoint. We do also have an online trial available if you just want to have it accessible in our tenant. Either option will get you all set up so you can try this out. So our resources provide lots of great information. Of course, we have a webinar section with all kinds of interesting solutions like the one we were talking about today, so I recommend that you check that out. We've got a tutorial section which helps you get started. So if you're new to the tools, I recommend you walk through that information. That'll help you get on track. And then beyond that, we have lots more information to help you out. We offer structured training sessions. You can work with an instructor. I lead most of that with customers that we work with. So you can, go as fast and far as you want with it, with guidance that we provide. So that's all part of Ultimate Forms. Let me go ahead and pause for a second. I want to make sure I address any questions that you may have, and then after that we can move on to the next part of the presentation. So if you guys do have any questions, go ahead and put them in the Q&A interface. I see that we already have some, and I'll try to address those right now. There's a question about, is this recorded? Yes, for sure this is recorded. We'll provide it later. The search function, it's specific to this site, so it can handle and work for multiple libraries at one time, especially the filter search. We use something called a roll-up feature, which I can demonstrate in just a second. Any other questions? Generally, this is targeted at a specific SharePoint site at a time. Any other questions? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next part. Before I do that, I want to make sure I talk to you about the roll-up. So in the filter search, that's using this documents roll-up web part. And what's interesting about this is you can combine and add multiple data sources. So if you want to have a full filtered search across multiple libraries, you can do that by configuring your data sources in the rollup to be for multiple libraries, and you can add them all in here, and that's going to all be in a single rollup together. So if you're interested in that concept where you can do a search and it's going to aggregate and bring you back results from multiple libraries, you can do it through this rollups web part. So definitely something worth checking out. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next part of the presentation, and I have more cool things to share with you about what you can do with SharePoint document libraries. I mentioned in the beginning, I have a platform I run on my own. This is an additional tool that you could use additional to Ultimate Forms. And it's called SharePointDashboards.com. These are formatting templates that allow you to better visualize data in SharePoint. In fact, some of the things that you saw in that template are included from this, like the starred documents, that's an example, and then that template for the thumbnails for the documents, those are in here. When you go into this site, if you click on Get Started, you're going to find that there are lots of templates here. We're going to focus on the ones that are related to documents and document libraries. So if you go to this first screen and click on Libraries, you'll see that there's 4 related templates for that. I'm going to walk through each of those right now so you can understand how these work, and this is some additional functionality that you could have in your SharePoint library interface. Okay, so as we already covered, this is plain vanilla SharePoint, if you will. So we're going to look at that same library with additional options featured. So anyone who uses Google Drive is going to be familiar with colored folders. You have the ability to do that. Naturally, that's not a part of SharePoint document libraries at all unless you apply this template. So that's what this template is. If you are interested in the concept of having folders that could have different colors, and that may signify a particular purpose, you can add that with a template, which is the colored folders template, which is right here. It's very easy to set this up. The way this is applied is you're able to go into the column settings, format this column, and then you can copy and paste the template from the SharePoint dashboard site over to the SharePoint site. That's how easy it is to do that. Another option that's available, you can have large libraries previewed. So this is, I almost like to refer to this as mega mode, but it's a way to show a tile style interface for documents. So SharePoint naturally is normally not going to do this. This combines preview images for things like images with large document icons, that type of thing. And of course you can navigate down through that as well, just the way you normally would navigate a library in SharePoint. So if that's something you're interested, having an alternative additional view to browse through documents in SharePoint as tiles, this is a template that you can use to accomplish that. Another additional template that you may find valuable, depending on the type of files that you're using, is one which shows a formatted size. So in the metadata already included in SharePoint, of course, it knows the size of files they're using, but it's not especially obvious when you're coming through a library how big files are. This gives you a file size bar, and it helps you if you want to think about maybe organizing or looking for files that are especially large in comparison to other files. So as you'll notice, there's even color coding. You can configure that according to whatever preferences you want. So this can scale, it can handle things, as in this case, that are fairly small up into files that may be more than 100 meg. So if you're working with any libraries with things like large files like videos, that could be really beneficial to you to improve the interface. So it would be just an additional column in your interface. So in order to get started with SharePoint dashboards, you can do a free sign up. And if you do a free sign up, you get access to 21 free templates immediately. And that will help you out. So all you need to do is stick in your name and email. You'll get your free login, and you can use those free templates as much as you want. And then additional to that, there are 130 pro templates. The ones I showed you for the library are pro templates. So there are lots of things you can do here, which we're not going to cover on our meeting today, but it includes many charting options, buttons, indicators, progress bars, you name it. So we spent a lot of time talking about improving the user interface for your SharePoint library, and this is a tool set that allows you to improve the user interface, not just for document libraries, but for SharePoint lists. So if you're interested in doing some things to make your SharePoint list interface look much better, these are all simple copy and paste templates. You do not have to install any software to SharePoint. You don't have to have an admin install anything like that. If you use SharePoint Online, you can take advantage of these templates. These templates are for SharePoint Online or an additional SharePoint Server subscription edition if you happen to have that. They'll work for that, but you can, of course, try this for free. And this is quite inexpensive. You only need a license for the person applying templates, and it's a monthly subscription charge for that. So I hope that you guys will check that out and begin with the trial with the free templates, and then if that's working well for you and you're ready, you can go ahead and add in the subscription, which will give you access to the 150 plus total templates at that site. Do you guys have any questions about SharePoint dashboards? Any questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I'll keep the session open for anybody who wants to stay around for any questions about advanced document management or SharePoint dashboards, but I'm going to stop the recording now.